No. The tail is going to jump. It's a slip-space rupture. You need this. EMP. Alright. They popped their chutes. We're going in hard.
With the second season of the Halo show debuting recently, I thought it was a good time to revisit the Halo franchise. I personally wasn't able to finish the first season, so it's very unlikely I'll be watching the second. As consolation though, I thought it was the perfect time to check out the next game in the franchise, Halo 3 ODST. Even though this isn't a mainline title or sequel, the Halo games I've played in the past have never disappointed, and the world has always held a special place in my heart. But then again, this isn't your typical Halo experience.
You're from Mickey, Dutch?
Negative.
We need to get above this crap. Link with the B-net. One of our drones must have seen where they hit.
From the moment you eject and drop out of the pod, the visual atmosphere and feel is very different. Like graphically, you can tell it's not quite the same, but you'd also know it's unmistakably Halo. The whole mood and vibe is dark and mysterious. There's a ghostly loneliness and eeriness to the city, having now been abandoned. And obviously this is an older game, so the graphical fidelity isn't great, but Bungie have done really well making the most out of what they've been given.
Of course they did.
Like looking at the face models for example, you can tell this game isn't from this decade, but the detail and animation work is actually pretty impressive considering this game is now 15 years old since its original release. I actually didn't realize it at first until playing through this spin-off, but the typical mainline Halo mission is pretty bright. ODST is vastly different from the get-go.
You gonna tell us her name, Gunny?
Ms. Naval Intelligence. Our new boss.
When you're playing as the rookie exploring the streets of New Mombasa, it's set at night, which to be fair really does help set the mood. The only issue is you kind of can't see anything.
I can't see out of this thing.
Like the Viz art is helpful, but I mean anything helps when it's this dark. The outline effect does help to mark enemies and points of interest, but it's only really marginally better and doesn't make that much of a difference. And when you're indoors, just forget about it. Look, I've always had an issue with the lighting in games, and I understand setting the mood, but when this isn't even a horror game, I feel like it takes away from the experience. Like check out this section for example. I mean there is still daylight in this part of the game. And then look at the exact same gamma settings for this section. I did end up increasing the gamma for the rest of my playthrough, but games almost always look more washed out when you do.
I think they're too busy to care. Looks like they found what they're looking for.
What about you? What about us?
When it comes to the voice acting for this game, I initially didn't expect much. Yes, Nathan Fillion is instantly recognizable, but being somewhat of a spin-off title, I thought it'd be more of a cameo than full-fledged character. After playing through and really getting into the game though, I've really come to appreciate how much character comes through, even though there doesn't feel to be that much screen time for each of your squad mates. Now, I want to note that I enjoy a lot of movies and shows. One of those shows is Firefly, which unfortunately only got one season. I mention this because I was actually surprised when I realized 3 of the main characters in ODST are voiced by none other than Adam Baldwin,
Sure would be nice if we had some grenades, don't you think?
Alan Tudyk,
Be my guest.
I'm a leaf on the wind. Watch how I soar.
and Nathan Fillion.
Pods. Now.
I aim to misbehave.
All 3 of which were crew and captain on Firefly and the film Serenity. So that was a nice surprise reunion, I guess. Obviously, they've done really well considering there's really not much dialogue, and Fillion is the only one that really gets to flex his talents.
Hey, rookie, you out there? Respond, that's an order.
Give it up, Gunny. Even if he ain't dead, he's lost in that soup.
Personally, I think one of the best parts of video games in general is the great music that's usually featured. Unfortunately, most soundtracks often play second fiddle to the visual splendor or gameplay though. Like, don't get me wrong, some games can really become absolute anthems for a generation, like the Halo theme did, but many are forgotten about, which is kind of ironic considering they often evoke the most emotion, especially during pivotal moments in stories.
No, they're gonna burn this city and then collapse the whole planet.
Permanent bastard! This is like Reach all over again!
At least that's my view. And guess what? The soundtrack for ODST is great. But because of the type of game it is, there's a real subdued nature to it. Like, it's not as powerful or dominant as the Halo theme, but there's still that quality sound being made. It's understandably not as well known, but I personally think it's really evocative and emotive. The only issue I had was how the game still has lulls of silence throughout, where I keep thinking it's gonna loop but doesn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was a little busy making sure perfume over here didn't take a round and blow us all up.
Eddie Buck, always thinking with his gun. You haven't changed one bit.
Me? What about you? Oh, so full of big Oni secrets, couldn't even give a guy a yes or no answer.
That's not fair.
Oh, you got that right.
Though the game itself was intended almost as a filler entry in the lull between Halo 3 and Reach, it's definitely got enough story here to be considered a standalone title. I think the term sidequel probably best captures what this game is, especially in terms of chronology. And though it was born out of appeasement, it has matured enough to really stand on its own. I mean, in the main games, you're embodying the larger-than-life tank of a man, Master Chief. In this game, you play as the much more real and grounded humans, and it does strike a fine balance. The mystery of what happened helps to keep you engaged, whilst the time jumps adds that extra variety and perspective to hold your attention. Each of the viewpoints adds some depth and slowly fits together to reveal the real reason behind your mission. I think what helped the game shine is how interesting each character was, even though I feel like they weren't actually in the game all that much.
Not yet.
And I actually really enjoyed the mixed perspectives. Like, I initially wasn't sure how the storytelling would feel being told from multiple different viewpoints and time jumps, but it actually works a lot better than I expected. Where in Reach, it's a lot more gritty and full of sacrifice, ODST has a somber tone without being overly bleak. There's still that element of hope that shines through, especially in the personality of the characters. And the relationships between each of them is a poignant reminder of what you're fighting for and helps to show this is a real war.
Affirmative.
All right. You up top.
What? This day ain't turning out so bad after all.
When it comes to gameplay, this is very much a proper Halo game. The gunplay is as good as ever and the weapon variety is great. All the classics return like the Needler, the Carbine, and my personal favourite, the Beam Rifle. I did notice some of the controls felt different, but I'm honestly not even sure if it's just me because the last Halo game I played was last year, so maybe I'm just imagining it. Now, when it comes to vehicular combat, there are definite changes. There's this new Covenant bike, I think, called a Chopper, which handles a bit weird but is still fun. And they've gotten rid of the machine gun on the Scorpion tanks, so all you've got is the main cannon, which is still fine. I mean, overall, it just feels like a faithful and fun Halo experience, and even though it's not a mainline successor, it's still very enjoyable.
Son of a gun!
I think one of the things I really appreciate about this franchise is the epic moments it manages to create. There's some pretty cool cutscenes scattered throughout, but the in-game spectacle and scale is probably one of my favourite parts. Like this Scarab boss battle, which I think might actually be optional, is not only super fun and challenging, but makes for a really epic portion of the game. It's this grand level that shows you the scale of the fight, and adds a bit of that wow factor. The final mission also manages to create some really huge impactful moments in terms of gameplay, music and visuals. I mean, this final run reminded me a lot of Halo CE's ending. And this last stand fight feels quite emotional and reminiscent of Reach's story. At least it did for me. Look, Bungie just knows how to deliver really grand and spectacular moments.
What can I say? It was a hell of a night.
I mean, all things considered, I think it's a really fun experience. To me, it's the type of game for the hardcore Halo nerds that really want to get in depth with the lore. Like if you really only care for the main story and Master Chief's journey, you may want to stick with the mainline Halo games, but this is definitely a great standalone experience. As someone who still holds Halo in pretty high regard, I can easily still recommend Halo 3 ODST in 2024. If you've managed to sit through this whole video, thank you so much for watching. I'm still looking to upload a brand new video once a fortnight, but be sure to let me know what else you'd like to see in the comments. Thanks again for watching. Hopefully, I'll catch you in the next one.